John, how are you, sir?
I am doing well.
I'm going to let me hand it off to you. I know you have in your possession a couple of hundred documents. Tell us what you have.
Yeah, so first off, there was a pretty big development today, right? So a lot of these stories that you and I have been talking about that I broke on the Hill and have talked about on your radio and TV show, they're mentioned by the whistleblower as the impetus for all of the conversations by Ukraine and between President Trump. I think that's significant. Why is that significant? Ukraine was really, truly concerned about what had happened in 2016, both with Biden and with the possibility that the Clinton DNC operation was trying to use Ukraine to influence the election. And they were so concerned, they wanted to raise this issue with the president. They wanted to raise this issue with State Department. And as I reported, they tried to raise it to the Justice Department. The magnitude of understanding that the CIA whistleblower here thought this was important to mention in the whistleblower means that the Ukrainians were really concerned about that. We're missing a very important part. It wasn't Donald Trump that was concerned about these issues. It was Ukraine first. That's why these prosecutors tried to take this information to the Justice Department, where they didn't find an audience, and then why they took it to Rudy Giuliani, and then why they eventually raised it with the president. Ukraine itself does not like what happened on its soil back in 2016, and I think the more people understand that the victim, the complainant, is not a campaign or a political activist, it is a country, an ally, that did not like the way our U.S. officials acted on its soil. It's so very important. And so tonight I hope to advance on your TV show and on the Hill the narrative and the information about Joe Biden. Joe Biden now has a very specific story. Yes, I did fire that prosecutor. I got him fired. Yes, I did use the threat of the $1 billion in loan guarantees to get it done. And yes, I did know that my son's company was under investigation at the time. But despite all those things, I only did it because that prosecutor was corrupt and inept, and I wanted to get a better prosecutor in. So tonight I will divulge from internal documents in the prosecutor's office in Ukraine and from the internal communications of the American legal team working with Hunter Biden and Burisma Holdings, that famous natural gas company, that the day that Biden effectuated that firing, immediately, that day, the Hunter Biden Burisma legal team was already trying to get in touch with the new guy, the guy that was going to be the replacement. He was a little busy that day. He didn't respond right away. Within a week, they got their audience in Ukraine. And when they got there, if you believe the Ukrainian prosecutor general's memo and the internal documents from the American legal team, they made a stunning revelation. They stated that the very basis Joe Biden had used to fire this prosecutor, he was corrupt, inept, not doing reforms, was, quote unquote, directly from these documents, false information. In other words, it was a dirty trick. They dirtied the guy up, got him fired, and then came in to try to make the case go away. That is a significant revelation because it is Joe Biden's word now conflicting with that of the legal team representing his son in the same case. It's very, very significant new information, and there's a lot of other revelations, but I think that's the headline.
Let's back up just a little bit here. So
You bet.
You're right. Let's stay with the facts. Yes, I demanded this guy get fired. Yes, I leveraged $1 billion taxpayer dollars to do it. Yes, I knew Hunter was being investigated. The New York Times warned him, and he was warned in December of, I believe, 2015. Remember, his son Hunter didn't get involved in this until 2014 after Obama sort of anointed him to be the head of Ukraine, which is why he had the $1 billion to give or not give. And that's when his son came in. Now, I've not been able to find any evidence of any background that Hunter Biden has with either Ukraine, energy, gas, of any kind. Have you found any?
I have not, and I think that was one of the concerns. When I interviewed the Ukraine prosecutors, and I interviewed a total of 5 prosecutors in Ukraine, people who were there when Hunter Biden was hired, people who were there when Joe Biden made the threat, and people who inherited the case afterwards, and they all had the same story. Their story was, hey, there was something weird about this. There's a board member who's also getting paid as a consultant, and he's taking the money out of Ukraine and sending it to the United States, and he doesn't look like he has any experience in Ukraine or gas, and so we wanted to interview him and say, what's up here? Was this about your dad and were you trying to cash in your dad, or did you really bring value to the Ukraine company? That's all the prosecutors were trying to do when Joe Biden shut them down. All 5 of those prosecutors tell the exact same story, and they provided me substantial parts of the official prosecutorial case file. And that case file shows there were legitimate questions. Hey, maybe at the end of the day they would clear Hunter Biden. But they had to investigate it, and they didn't get that chance. And they really believed that Joe Biden's interference in that internal matter, an internal investigation of Ukraine, amounted to political interference, amounted to a father trying to help his son out rather than do what's best for Ukraine. And tonight I'm going to divulge another document. This is a sworn affidavit issued under penalty of perjury by Victor Shokin, the prosecutor who Joe Biden.
By the way, let's before you go to the sworn affidavit.
Yes.
And this would be the Ukrainian prosecutor. He knows about perjury.
Right.
You interviewed him. The Washington Post interviewed him. I'll let you characterize yours, but I will quote ABC News, and Shokin maintained his suspicion. Yeah, Biden was not acting like the U.S. president. Vice president, he was an individual, and acting as an individual like the individual interested in having me removed and gone, so I didn't interfere with the Burisma investigation. That was an ABC direct quote.
That's exactly right. 100%.
So what did Shokin say to you?
Shokin said to me, listen, when I was fired, I was told the reason I was being fired was that Joe Biden was unhappy. He had been asking for my resignation for months, and every time they asked for my resignation, they couldn't offer any reason. They didn't offer any proof that I was corrupt. They didn't offer any proof that I was inept. But they just kept asking for it. And when I got fired, I was finally told, you should have stopped investigating Burisma. That's what made Joe Biden mad and why we had to fire you, because we couldn't bankrupt the country. That's what he said in the interview. And that's exactly what he says under oath in this new court filing introduced.
This is the sworn affidavit from the prosecutor fired. I'm just trying to keep everybody in the loop. Go ahead.
That's right. This is a brand new document that we'll be divulging tonight in the story. And it's a very important document. He says, I was fired because I refused to drop a far-reaching, wide-ranging corruption probe involving Burisma Holdings and its American members, including Hunter Biden. That's what he says. I was fired for that reason. There's no equivocation, no doubt, no, I think I was fired. He says it flat out, and he describes why. He had been criticized about that, and that this was a political act, not an act of accountability. This wasn't a just firing. It was to solve a political problem that Ukraine had. Now, what's interesting about that, Shokin's swearing that out in a statement, is that that's exactly what Shokin's other colleagues, including some who came into the office long after Biden had effectuated the firing and who began to look at the case file saying, whoa, this doesn't look right. And they became so concerned that they hired an American lawyer, a former U.S. attorney from the United States, and they reached out to the Justice Department last fall, and they said, "Hey, Justice Department, we're not talking about crimes against Ukrainian law. We think there might be some criminality against American law. You should look at this. Would you like our evidence? We'll come on over and deliver our evidence." And the Justice Department sat silent, did not answer it. We got good news last night, though. Last night, Attorney General Barr's official spokeswoman said John Barretta is going to look at the evidence. I'm sorry, Durham is going to look at the evidence that these Ukrainians have and incorporate that into this review that he's doing into the 2016 election. So finally, people are going to analyze it, look at it, determine if there was something unethical or illegal, and get to the bottom of it. But these prosecutors took an extraordinary act. They went and hired an American lawyer because they were so disturbed what they found. One of those prosecutors only learned about the circumstances after Joe Biden, but he reviewed the case file, became so concerned, he felt like it was his duty to report to the Americans that there might have been something improper here. That tells you something about what Ukrainians think. It's why President Zelensky wanted to have the conversation with President Trump in July, why the Ukrainian prosecutors tried to get a visa to come to the United States to deliver the evidence, why they hired an American lawyer. They've been waving their hand for more than a year saying some bad things went on in 2016 in Ukraine and they involve America, and you guys should know about it and look at it, make your own assessment. That's all they've been asking to do.
Let me pick up on that point, because that was your original story about how they tried to influence and were begging us to take the evidence that they had about Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump in the 2016 election. Well, I mean, here's the Politico. It's actually a very, very long piece, and It was written in January of 2017. And the headline is, John Solomon, Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire. Kiev officials are scrambling to make amends with the president-elect after quietly working to boost Clinton. That is not you. That is Politico. They're no friends of Donald Trump. So what is this evidence that they have? You must have something here. But then, again, this is aside from the Biden aspect that you're now disclosing today.
Well, 2 years after Politico wrote that story, and here's the important thing. At the time, the Ukrainian government did not acknowledge to Politico that these things had happened. They stood silent and just let Politico quote, former Ukrainian officials and a former DNC official and some emails they had.
You want me to read it? Ukrainian government officials tried to help Hillary Clinton and undermine Trump by publicly questioning his fitness for office. They disseminated documents implicating a top Trump aide in corruption.
That's right.
They suggested they were investigating the matter only to back away after the election. They helped Clinton's allies research damaging information on Trump and his advisors. A Politico investigation found a Ukrainian-American operative who was consulting for the DNC met with top officials in the Ukrainian embassy in D.C. in an effort to expose ties between Trump, Manafort, Russia, etc. And I can keep going.
Yeah, those are all true facts. And the only interesting thing was at that moment, the Ukraine embassy and the Ukraine government in Kiev would not acknowledge the story. They just stood quiet. 2 years later, I went
some
back.
were talking. All right, stay there. John Solomon. Yep. We're going to go through this very slowly. We got two aspects that we're following here. One is now this treasure trove of documents that's blowing open the whole Biden question here. The second is, Ukraine has been trying to give us the information. They tried to influence. They wanted to make amends with the president-elect after working to boost Clinton. And all the stuff that has been alleged about Donald Trump was true once again about them, like Russia. I guess you only care about Russian interference, not the dirty dossier. You only care about foreign interference in an election as long as it's on Donald Trump, not Hillary Clinton. This double standard it's now becoming dangerous.
Mark, 660 AM, The Answer.
In a treasure trove of documents he's obtained, he's writing it all up, including the sworn affidavit from Shokin, and you've got all these other, real quick here, you can summarize, beyond Ukrainian efforts to help Hillary in the 2016 election, this blows open the whole Joe Biden lie. Tell us where he lied.
Well, his statement, listen, we'll determine if he lies after we do more investigation. What I can say is there is now credible, on the record, extensive evidence suggesting that Joe Biden's current story about why he fired the prosecutor in Ukraine is inaccurate, inconsistent, likely wrong, and here's why. He says I
can give you a billion reasons why, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'll leave that to the pundits. I'm going to just stick to the factual stuff as a reporter, right? He says he fired the guy because there was clear evidence, and everybody in the Western world agreed that he was corrupt and inept, and he needed to be removed. And he says it had nothing to do with the fact that prosecutor was investigating his son. We are now going to show the very legal team that was working with Hunter Biden and Burisma to make that investigation go away was pouncing on the office, showing up at the door, calling, get a meeting, with the replacement prosecutor the very day Biden got Mr. Shokin fired. If there's no connection, why would that legal team have to swoop in at that very moment? That's the first thing that conflicts and contradicts the vice president's story. The second is when those lawyers got there and they began talking to the prosecutor general's office, the new guy, the guy taking over for the fired prosecutor, the first thing they said is, we're sorry, we're here to apologize because the false information that was used to get Mr. Shokin fired, that was done by the State Department, by public figures, by U.S. officials. It was wrong, and we'd like to make it up to you.
All right. John Solomon, go do your work.